One of the most basic wild thoughts that I keep coming back to is that modern medicine, people assume, is mainstream. And if you deviate from the mainstream, you must be some kind of hippie, granola, crunchy, anti-vaxxer goofball who goes with your feelings rather than medical research and doesn't study the facts. And nothing could be further from the truth. Really, modern medicine and what falls under the category of respected physicians that go to medical school in the West here is not mainstream. It's not mainstream at all, because it would be mainstream if they were taught a holistic version. And holistic immediately sounds hippy dippy granola, but it's not. It simply means the whole, being taught everything that humankind has come to understand about health. And all that Western medicine teaches is drugs, is how to prescribe drugs. 99.9% of what doctors are taught is which drug has which effect. And it's not even which drug will fully cure you. That would be nice. It's which drug will create which effect inside of you. So it's, if you have certain symptoms, this drug will squish the symptoms. It doesn't say if the drug will take away the illness. A lot of times it doesn't get to the root of the illness. Sometimes it tries to. It definitely doesn't get to the root of why you are more susceptible to that illness in the first place. Most people, I think, deep down inside understand that if they exercised as much as they really believe they should deep down inside, and if they ate as healthy as they really believe they should, that they would eliminate 90 to 95% of all their health problems. But they're undisciplined, they know they're undisciplined, and when these health problems come up, they panic and they run to the doctor to get the drug because they believe that the drug will alleviate the symptoms that are causing them distress. We all do this. It's the easy way out, but it's also the way when you get panicky that you run to, because when you start having these scary symptoms, life-threatening symptoms sometimes, you feel it's too late to start eating right and exercising, even if that was the best path. Now you need to go get the quick fix to save your life, and then maybe down the road you can try to ease your way into more healthy living in general. But a lot of that isn't even true, because a lot of medicines, and this is again mainstream science, a lot of medicines we find out are killing people. They have side effects that cause more problems. They compound the problems of people's health. People might be allergic to them. And you might say, oh, that's a very small percentage. Doctors know the percentages of the people who have adverse reactions, and they weigh that into their figures when they're making the diagnosis, when they're writing the prescription. Not necessarily. You would be shocked how often doctors will prescribe a drug and they didn't do all the research to find out, oh, a very large percentage, like up to 5% of people have a horrific reaction to this drug. The whole idea of being your own patient advocate is even controversial to some people. The idea that you would look up your own disease and spend hours studying it from every angle. Sometimes doctors hate that, because they do get people who come in and think, oh, I know better because I read one article. I know better than you with your 12 years of medical education because I read one article for 20 minutes. And that I understand why doctors would be super annoyed by that. Any person who's a profession in any endeavor who has someone come up and criticize their profession because they read something for 5 minutes, that's super irritating. But that's not the case in a lot of these situations. It's the doctor doesn't have time to deep dive into every single disease out there, because there's thousands of diseases. And the person suffering from the disease has all day, every day to deep dive, because a lot of times they're incapacitated, they can't work. All they can do is sit there and research their particular disease. So they start reading all the literature and learning everything about their disease, and then they start picking out things that they discover, comparing it to the symptoms they're feeling, and they can often become a better doctor of understanding what their body needs than their actual doctor. And then they go to communicate these things to their doctor. Well, I read this, I'm feeling this, and according to what it says here, I might need this medicine. Could you prescribe this medicine for me? Because there's a limit to which medicines a non-doctor has access to. And sometimes the doctors will appreciate that and say, oh, you did a lot of research. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I will prescribe that for you. But I don't think that's usually the case. I think usually the doctor has a bit of an ego, and to more or less degree, every person's different, every doctor's different. I'm not condemning doctors or condemning anybody, but it's human nature, and it goes across the board. Nobody is free from the pitfalls of human nature, no matter what their profession. And a lot of times a doctor will say, oh yeah, that's nice, you did your own research, condescendingly. Well, I'm the doctor, I see your symptoms, I know what works. I treated 7 other people in your condition, and when I treated them, they got better, and at least their symptoms were alleviated for a time. And therefore, I'm going to do what I know works. I'm going to prescribe this medicine and not what you think you want. And then the person has a choice. Do they listen to the doctor, or do they get a second opinion? Or do they try to find a holistic way and try to find over-the-counter or nutritional ways to self-treat their own disease? And it's scary because at that point, they're taking their life into their own hands and they're defying the word of a professional. Most people don't have that kind of confidence in their own ability to self-diagnose, even after they've read all the literature. The fear of a doctor's authority in the West is tremendous. I mean, we think they hold life and death in their hands. And to a degree, they do. But we also think that they have this top to bottom knowledge of how the human body works. And in reality, they know this much. And if you ask the most honest doctor, they will say, yeah, most of the time we're throwing darts in the dark and listening to see what sounds like it hit. Chemotherapy is a great example. There's like 300 different types of chemotherapy, and usually only 2 or 3 will have a good effect on that cancer. So they try to narrow it down, and they try this one, then they try this one, then they try this one, and hopefully eventually they find a chemotherapy that will kill the cancer before it kills the patient, because chemotherapy also destroys your good cells, and that's why it makes people incredibly sick most of the time. And it's almost a question of, do I want to be sick from the cancer or the chemo? The chemo is usually, not usually, but very often more painful and causes more discomfort and more, almost takes away your will to live than the cancer does. So where do I stand on all this? I believe when it comes to medicine, when it comes to putting man-made chemicals and combinations of chemicals into your body, that the best case scenario is to always avoid if possible. I don't think someone dying with no other options should push the doctor away and say, no, I'm not going to take any medicine because Matt said so. I think you should have a balanced approach. But I think whenever possible, you should aim to find what is the root cause of my illness. And this goes back to my own faith. I believe we are fearfully and wonderfully created. I believe we are designed head to toe to have a perfect body that can heal itself in every circumstance. And when our body exhibits an illness, I believe that is our body telling us that we're living wrong, that we're sleeping wrong, we're eating wrong, we're exercising wrong, we're even harboring wrong thoughts in our head, even like the amazing studies that have been done that show that people that hold grudges against people who harbor very negative, nasty thoughts, make themselves sick, like physically ill, like to the point where they're sometimes bedridden. So you should first ask yourself, what are all the things I'm doing that I could change? And changing is hard, but everything hard is rewarding. So not only will you get rid of the illness, you'll find your life so much more fulfilling and productive if you're brave enough to make those changes. Starting an exercise program is hard. And that's why I always say start slowly and ease your way into it. Don't kill yourself and then quit, which is what I've done many times. Same with the diet thing. If you can't go cold turkey and go hardcore into a heavy new diet, ease yourself into it. But be honest, don't ease yourself in and then ease right back into your bad habits. Now you can say, Matt, that's real nice and all, but what proof do you have that you're an authority on this kind of thing? All I can say is in my life and in every person's life who has let me counsel them and has listened to my advice, I'm at a very high level of confidence that I can help walk most people into a healthier life where they can get off all of their medications in most cases and be happier and healthier than they've ever been, only through diet and exercise. I'd throw a few more caveats in there, not just diet and exercise. There's some other great things out there. This might fall under diet, but the amount of water you consume, the way you breathe, practicing breathing exercises. And again, that starts to get into the realm of sounding hippy-dippy, but it's not at all, because the way we used to live, the way our bodies were designed, we were outside more, doing physical labor all day long, running, climbing, falling down. Our body is built for all that stuff, and our body maintains health in that kind of environment. And when you stick us in an artificial environment, indoors, very low stress, and I mean like physical stress, like there's very few things trying to kill us. There's very few things we have to look out for. There's very few things we have to climb over and use a lot of muscle to get past in our day-to-day life. When our body isn't stressed in those ways, we don't end up breathing the way we need to. And when we're not breathing the way we need to, we're not getting enough oxygen. And when we're not getting enough oxygen, our cells are sickly. And it's as simple as not getting enough water. We don't drink the way we need to because our bodies are not in sync, and our system telling us how much water we need to drink is offline. And so drinking a little extra water, even when you don't feel like it, often will take away that headache or that stomach ache, and it'll put you in an amazing mood. Just a single cup of water out of the blue that you don't normally drink. And in the same way, doing 15 minutes of deep breathing exercises will sometimes take away heartburn. It'll take away a stomach ache. It'll make you feel amazing. It'll help you sleep better at night. In fact, doing it, and you hear my cough right now. This cough, ironically, is coming from, I don't have a cold or anything. It's coming from heartburn. When heartburn gets up high enough, it can trigger a cough. And I've had chronic heartburn because I don't do the right thing. That is one area of my life I'm still trying to conquer. I am not on any meds. I also am not exercising this exact moment the way I need to, and I'm not eating the way I need to. But I drink a lot of water, and I stay away from meds whenever possible. Every once in a great while, and I mean like maybe 3 times this whole year, I've taken a few Advil when I had a headache. I usually had the headache from caffeine withdrawal, and that's another thing. I'm a little bit too attached to coffee. So these are my vices, what I'm laying out in front of you. I'm a little bit too attached to coffee, and I am taking anti-heartburn medication. And when I say, I just said I'm not on medication, now I say I'm taking, well, I take Tums as needed, and that's over the counter, but I consider that a medication that I shouldn't have to take, and that is me using a Band-Aid to cover up, because I don't want to address the root cause. And the root cause is I'm not exercising right, and I'm not eating right, and that's why I have heartburn. But when that heartburn comes in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, popping a couple Tums is a lot more soothing than doing the deep breath work I have to do to make that heartburn go away. But sometimes I run out of Tums. Last night I had none left, and I didn't want to get dressed and drive to the drugstore at 3 a.m. So I just laid there and I did some deep breath work, and I made the heartburn go away because I know I can do that. It takes more effort. It's less comfortable, but it works. So, open discussion. How much do you think, especially after this really wild pandemic, that a lot of us distrusted the government and the government's sanctioning of certain health officials for having a certain narrative and demonizing everyone else who dared to challenge that narrative? We found that very distrustful from the beginning, and others of us maybe along the way started to say, wait a minute, this looks fishy. And hopefully towards the end of it, the majority of Americans realized that there's something very fishy that went on, that this was not all on the up and up. And being called a conspiracy theorist in 2020 made you look like you were the kooky one. But ironically, in 2022, 90% of the stuff you were saying as a conspiracy theorist is now being said directly from the Department of Health, that you were right all along. And oops, new studies show that apparently you were right all along. So what do you guys think about all this? Where do you think you should draw the line? Should you have a balanced approach? Should you trust doctors to a certain degree? Should you trust doctors 100%? Where do you do it? For me, the one thing I would really, really trust doctors with is injury. If I get severely injured, I want a doctor to patch me up. I want a doctor to remove the thing stuck in my body that shouldn't be there, whether it's a branch or a bullet or whatever. I want them to sew me up. I want them to put antiseptic in the wound. I want them to patch me up. If I broke a bone, I want them to set it so it doesn't heal incorrectly. When you injure yourself, that's where I trust doctors. I trust doctors to treat injuries. Beyond that, it gets shaky. I definitely think there's a place for doctors in many different realms, and I think they're a godsend, and I think they're heroes in a lot of cases. I mean, also birth defects, conjoined twins, people that need severe operations because they were born with a hole in their heart or something like that. Definitely, doctors are heroes, absolute heroes. Cleft palates, there's a whole bunch of list of things. But I think 99% of our aches and pains and illnesses are self-created because we don't want to live the way we should. And running to doctors just complicates it and makes it worse and kicks the can down the road. But down the road, the can is 10 times bigger and heavier and more painful. So we inevitably cause more suffering by trusting these professionals who were not taught about nutrition, not taught about exercise, only taught about which drugs will have which effects, and taught basically 12 years of incredibly intense memorization. How many medicines can you memorize? How many combinations of medicine do have what combination of effect on what part of the body, and what dosage for what amount of time, and what is actually happening in the way that the body responds to those medications, what's happening in the cells, what's happening in the blood. There's thousands of years of science that has accumulated and been proven that these doctors are learning. So I'm not negating that what they're learning in medical school is false. It's real, but it's not even half of the picture of how the body works. They're really only taught how to use drug therapy, not all of the other therapies that frankly make up a larger percentage of how to treat a human body. A larger percentage. Drugs should not even be 50%. In reality, there's rarely an artificial drug that doesn't have side effects that range from uncomfortable to very bad to deadly. And honestly, the best doctor on earth that has studied the most can never, ever be sure which patient is going to have which side effects. And that's a scary thing, especially when you look at the vast amount of drugs that get recalled every single year and the vast amount of lawsuits that go into place when it's proven that a lot of the drug companies didn't do proper testing or knew about a much larger percentage of people who are suffering horrible side effects or even death and didn't release all of that info to the public in a timely manner or in the correct way. Drugs themselves cause other diseases in a lot of cases. Drugs cause dependency, addiction problems, and drugs ultimately, and I'm talking about prescription drugs that were prescribed by a registered licensed physician, very often kill. And you really can't compare that to diet and exercise. It's much, much, much more rare that even a strange, unusual fad diet or even exercise that's done improperly is going to have the harsh health problems that drugs given to the wrong person will. Yes, there's risks with everything. There's risks that you can injure yourself exercising. People do it a lot. And you can go on a diet that's so extreme that you cause more problems. But for the vast majority of cases, basic exercise and basic healthier eating is going to eliminate and be so much more safer, trustworthy, and just common sense than popping a pill full of all kinds of chemicals that you have no idea what the chemistry in your body is going to have a reaction to. So anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them in the comments and we'll have more fun discussions like this. Even tell me more topics you'd like to talk about. It's kind of fun.